Frank Butcher was the king who lost it all. At one time, he owned a bed and breakfast and a car lot in Albert Square. For a time, he was even the joint landlord with his wife Pat of the Queen Vic. But 1993 had not been a good year. After being stung with a huge tax bill, Frank was already struggling. But when Pat was arrested and sent to prison for accidentally killing a woman while driving, his businesses suffered and he was facing financial ruin. Many times he thought about leaving Albert Square and starting again, but he couldn't do it. This wasn't some deep-rooted work ethic or even a strength of character. He literally wasn't able to leave without something pulling him back. And this was why the Rani had selected this specific spot for her trap, because Frank was not alone. Generations of families had been born here, lived out their lives and died within the same quarter mile. They spoke in hushed tones about jobs up west or south of the river, while Albert Square's unique gravitational pull stopped them from ever leaving for good. His wife Pat, née Pat Hills, had grown up nearby and married Pauline's brother Pete. Even years later, after they had divorced and Pete had married Kathy, Pat found herself returning to the square and drawing Frank in with her. It was the same for all of them, every single resident of Albert Square. Their complex family trees were horrifically interwoven. It was not unknown for individuals to discover that their sister was also their mother, or parents who'd been buried and mourned long ago were still alive and longing to return. Albert Square was a chronological, genealogical impossibility, and the perfect location for the Rani's trap. Frank crossed the square deep in thought. He barely registered the aristocratic woman with the long blonde hair and the furtive expression until unseen hands seized her by the shoulders and dragged her through the doors of the Queen Vic. "Well," said Frank to himself, "I've seen them thrown out of the Vic, but never dragged in." He chuckled to himself and realized with some sadness that it was the first time in months that he'd had anything to laugh about. As he passed the Queen Vic, the entire building seemed to shimmer slightly as a faint, wheezing, groaning sound hung in the air. Inside the Rani's TARDIS, which was no longer disguised as the Queen Vic pub, Romana struggled in vain to free herself from the strong arms of the Rani's assistant. Sirian held her in an efficient arm lock as he marched her across the control chamber and into a corridor full of capsules. Through the circular portholes on each capsule, Romana saw the faces of the Rani's menagerie, frozen in time. They approached an open capsule, and Sirian pushed her inside with a hefty shove. The capsule door locked around her, and Romana had time merely to turn around before the stasis field flooded over her and fixed her into position. "Human sample acquired, mistress," Sirian cheered, unaware that his captive was not in the least bit human. "Excellent. Prepare to rematerialize at the center of the Earth-time meridian, Greenwich." As Sirian adjusted the dials on his mistress's console, lights danced around the Rani's impassive face. He suddenly thought she had the look of the devil about her. But back in the capsule corridor, the old doctor was making plans of his own. He managed to make a connection with his replacement, the short, scruffy one. They knew what needed to be done.
"Risky, but it's good work."
"It's worth a try, come on."
They focused upon the capsule that contained the form of their future companion, Romana. Inside the capsule, the Time Lady's second heart began to beat again. There was a blinding flash, and the capsule door sprung open.